Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings everyone and welcome to today's video. In today's video, inshallah, we are going to be talking about verse number 102 of chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, which tells the story of the two angels Harut and Marut. The verse reads as follows: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واتبعوا ما تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان وما كفر سليمان ولكن الشياطين كفروا يعلمون الناس السحر وما أنزل على الملكين ببابل هاروت وماروت وما يعلمان من أحد حتى يقولا إنما فتنة فلا تكفر فيتعلمون منهما ما يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه وما هم بضارين به من أحد إلا بإذن الله ويتعلمون ما يضرهم ولا ينفعهم ولقد علموا لمن اشتراه ما له في الآخرة من خلاق ولبئس ما شروا به أنفسهم لو كانوا يعلمون. The rendition of which is, and as a substitute they followed what the devils recited out against the reign of Solomon. But Solomon did not act unethically, whereas the devils acted unethically, teaching people occultic worship and that which had been sent down upon the two angels at Babel, Harut and Marut. But the both of them did not teach it to anyone until after they had said, "We are merely a temptation, so do not act unethically." But the people learned from the both of them that which they could use to cause separation between an individual and their spouse, though they could not do any harm to anyone except by the permission of God. They learned that which caused them harm and did not benefit them, and they certainly did in fact know that the one who purchased it would not have any share in the hereafter. Terrible indeed is that which they traded their souls for, if only they had known better. Now this verse has led some groups of people thinking that the two angels taught people magic. However, this to me doesn't seem to align with the verse, so I thought I'd make a video on it. I would agree that the verse is not as detailed in terms of its story, but it does provide us with sufficient information to understand the point of the story, much like some of other stories of the Quran. The verse informs us of a certain act which God has not approved of, namely sihr, and in the indulging of which renders an individual to commit the act of Kufr. The verse also informs us that harm cannot be caused to anyone unless if God had willed it to do so. We will explain what that means as we go through the verse, but let us take a look at the first statement of the verse. The verse starts out as follows: وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ. And as a substitute, they followed what the devils recited out during the reign of Solomon. This is in connection to the previous verse, where in the context of the children of Israel, God says, وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَا مَعَهُمْ نَبَذَ فَرِيقٌ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِمْ كَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. It tells us that, for whenever there did come to them a messenger specifically from God, in fulfillment of that which is with them, a group among them to whom the revelation was given tossed the revelation of God behind their backs, as if they had not known. So this verse informs us that whenever there did come a messenger from God to the children of Israel, who came to fulfill what they already possessed with them of the revelation of God, a group among those who had the revelation in their hands, namely the scholars, priests, and scribes, they tossed the revelation of God behind their backs as if they did not know, meaning that they gave preference to other teachings over the revelation of God and they followed those instead. This can also be correlated to today's Muslim community, which has cast the revelation of God, i.e. the Quran, and given preference to the works of men, namely the Hadith. Though some might argue that they do not give preference to the Hadith, their actions, however, would say otherwise. People today are more interested in the Hadith literature than they are in the Quran. They would rather listen to stories of the Sahabas, for example, and the accomplishments of certain Muslim scholars over the Quran. They would rather listen to the verdicts of scholars rather than the Quran itself, thinking that these two are interchangeable. When the Quran is expressed to them, they immediately squint at it and show no care to it. Anyway, this is not the topic for today, so let us continue on with the subject. In the following verse, God informs us that instead of following the revelations of God, the children of Israel followed what the devils expressed against the reign of Solomon. What the devils recited out exactly, we are not told in this particular sentence, but we are told that Suleiman or Solomon did not act unethically, whereas the devils acted unethically, implying that whatever the devils recited out against the reign of Solomon was something which, if one were to indulge in it, they would be committing Kufr, i.e. acting unethically. Similarly, the sentence can also be understood to mean that even the mere reciting out or expression of this practice would make someone act unethically. So both the reciter and the one upon whom this something is recited is guilty of committing the act of kufr, that is unethical behavior, as per the context of this verse. The verse here exonerates Solomon for ever having indulged in this kind of behavior. And the reason why this is the case is due to the allegations by the followers of the Bible, who claimed that Solomon not only lost his mind and fell prey to his sexual desires and lusted after women during his later years, but that he also engaged in sorcery and idolatry. Thus, these are some very offensive allegations, and so it was a necessity for God to comment on them, particularly since we are told in the Quran that Solomon was an excellent servant of God. The verse then goes on to say that the devils were teaching people sihr, which can be translated as magic, sorcery, enchantment, wizardry, voodoo, trickery, illusion. Basically anything that fools the mind can be labeled as sihr, and depending on where the word occurs, it will give you an idea of what is being referenced. In this verse, the crime is that of indulging in occultic behavior or occultic worship. And by that we mean the raw definition of the term, meaning seeking knowledge of the hidden things, also referred to in the Quran as al-ghaib, by appealing to supernatural entities, often accompanied by certain ritualistic practices. Thus, these devils, according to this verse, were teaching people occultic practices that might have involved spell casting, ritual sacrifices, divination, and other similar practices. In addition to these, we are told in the verse that these devils were also teaching people something which was sent down upon the two angels at Babel, Harut and Marut. What that something was, we are not told in the verse. However, it is distinguished from the sihr that the devils were reciting out. We are informed in the following sentence that both these angels did not teach it to anyone until after they had said, "Innama nahnu fitnatun, fala takfur," meaning we are merely a temptation, so do not act unethically. Meaning we are merely a means of trial for you, so do not indulge in this sort of knowledge. So according to this part of the verse, these angels had some information which would act as a temptation for one if they were to engage in it. And these angels would say to the person to only partake in it at their own peril, as they could not guarantee what would result in learning this information. Thus, they told them not to commit kufr, that is, to not act unethically. My understanding of this statement is that the mere learning of this information itself was not kufr, i.e. unethical, but rather it was the way how it was utilized by the individual that would determine whether one had committed kufr or not. In the following sentence, we are told of the nature of this information, namely that the people learned from the both of them that which they could use to cause separation or division between an individual and their spouse. This means this information was of such nature that it was capable of causing rifts between a husband and their spouse. Once again, we are not given a name for this sort of information, but we are merely told that it could cause this division. So there can be multiple guesses as to what sort of information is capable of doing such a thing. My understanding is that it probably was some sort of information that they knew about the spouses, which if it were to be disclosed to the public would cause division between the spouses. It could have been some sort of shameful or embarrassing information that one of the parties did not wish the other one to know. And so they would approach these angels and would inquire of them of that information, to which the angels would say this is very tempting information and that they were to tread very carefully with how they were to go about implementing it. Some people, particularly those who might have been insecure in their relationships, might have acquiesced to learn this information about their spouses, and so they would return home to their spouses and would unjustly use this information against them, thereby behaving unethically. Some of the people, particularly those who held grudges over the relationship of others, might have used this sensitive information to break up those who already were married, if they desired to be with that person. So these people would learn this information, and then they would either share it with the person that they wished to be with, hoping that this would cause enmity between the couple, or they would spread this gossip around in society, hoping that it would achieve the same result. We do not have to go too far to witness this sort of behavior. It is prevalent in every society. In the next part of the verse we are told, though they could not do any harm to anyone except by the permission of God, meaning that this information would not do any harm to anyone unless it were by the permission of God. So unless God had allowed such information to be harmful to someone, then it would not be effective. So if someone, for example, had a strong relationship that was based on godly values of mutual respect, dignity, and honor, then these sorts of ploys would be ineffective on such a couple. The verse then concludes by informing us that وَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ, that they learned that which caused them harm and did not benefit them. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمُوا لَمَنِ اشْتَرَاهُ مَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ, and they certainly did in fact know that the one who purchased it would not have a share in the hereafter. وَلَبِئْسَ مَا شَرَوْا بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. Terrible indeed is that which they traded their souls for, if only they had known better. Meaning, since they engaged in the act of kufr, in the end, it brought them nothing but harm, and they were well aware of that fact, that nothing good ever comes from this sort of behavior. Yet, there are people who still indulge in this sort of behavior even unto this day. Let this be a lesson to anyone who has some information about a couple, which, if they were to disclose, would bring about separation between them. If the information is not of a criminal nature, then keep it to yourself and do not propagate it around, especially if it is not verified. If someone did something bad in their youth, for example, something non-criminal, of course, but rather embarrassing, or something that the other person in a relationship might find problematic to the point that it would mess up their relationship, then you cannot spread it around, as that would be in bad taste and might even constitute kufr, especially if that's what you intend in the first place. So, to sum up this video, as to what these two angels Harut and Marut were teaching the people, I believe it to have been any sensitive information, perhaps some form of gossip that was capable of causing division between a couple. I don't subscribe to the idea that it was some sort of black magic or voodoo or that sort of thing. I believe that this verse can be perfectly explained without appealing to the supernatural. Inshallah, someday I might make a video on the topic of devils or the devil in the Quran and give you my understanding of what that may be a reference to as well. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.